Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
What do you think of Boots against Bud? Is that a fight that interests you?
No, he don't bring nothing to the table. He got our leftovers. Why would Bud want to go backwards? I wouldn't go backwards. Bud looking for bigger and better fights. So where he can etch his name in the concrete forever.
Crawford ain't interested in Jaron Ennis. And why would he be? He already tried to fight him. Before the Spence fight, he already tried to fight him. Bozy Ennis admitted Black Prime contacted them. They wanted to do a Crawford fight, and Team Ennis were more focused on staying loyal to Showtime. Thus, you snooze, you lose.
And it looks like Ennis is with PBC now.
News has come out that the PBC offered Subriel Matias, IBF Super Lightweight Champion Subriel Matias, a Jaron Ennis fight at 147.
What the fuck kind of offer is that?
What kind of offer indeed? To keep Subriel Matias on board, to keep him on your side of things. The most you had to offer him was
what?
An Amantis Stanionis fight at 147 or a Jaron Boots Ennis fight at 147. I mean, what's in it for Matias? What, an IBF title? He already has an IBF title at a hotter weight, in a hotter division than 147, because 147, it's a ghost town now.
What was in it for Matias? Vacate your own title to go fight Jaron Ennis for his? What's the incentive?
It's not a bigger fight. That's not a bigger fight than a Devin Haney fight, a Teofimo Lopez fight, or targeting the winner of Romero versus Cruz. Fighting Jaron Ennis for an IBF title at 147, that's not a bigger fight than those fights, especially when you already have an IBF title of your own. It seems to me what the PBC was trying to do was feed Subriel to Jaron Ennis to enhance Ennis's profile.
Not Subriel's. They weren't doing Subriel any favors with that proposition. They weren't doing him no favors with that fight.
I don't have any illusions about what would have happened, how the fight would have played out. Jaron Ennis not only has the right style for the job, but the right size. He's naturally bigger than Subriel Matias. So between his stature, size, his length, and his strength, and his base style, that he's a boxer-puncher. Boxer-punchers have a tactical advantage over pressure fighters. I do think Jaron Ennis would have beat him, but if he would have beat him...
Congratulations, you beat another 140-pounder.
Is that the best the PBC can do? You know, I wasn't impressed when he beat Sergey Lipinets, being honest with you. I wouldn't be impressed if he beat Matias. Matias is a 140-pounder that has unfinished business at 140 pounds, and I would rather see him finish that business at 140 before he moves up to 147 to be cannon fodder for Jaron Boots Ennis, who really should be fighting other welterweights. I mean, why isn't he fighting Amantis Stanionis? Why isn't he fighting Radzov Butaev? Why isn't he fighting Blair Cobbs?
Mario Barrios, or just somebody at 147. If this is the best the PBC has to offer, then what the fuck is he doing over there?
Small cult of followers that he's amassed, what really are just jilted Errol Spence fans that are now pouring their hopes and aspirations into Jaron Ennis to be the anti-Crawford that Errol Spence Jr. wasn't. They're urging him on. They want him to get a Crawford fight, but it was Rick Glacier that said it best. Everybody needs to get a Crawford versus Ennis fight out of your head. Who's putting up the guarantees? There's no money to pay to fighters what they would want and deserve to fight each other. Ennis has never been a main event on pay-per-view, so the bout would definitely be financially uncharted. And Ennis has not proven to be an attraction yet. If Showtime was still in boxing, the possibility would exist. But with Amazon not putting up any money, and with PBC on Skid Row fiscally, a Crawford versus Ennis fight doesn't exist. Now you know.
It's what these people don't want to understand. We know that Jaron Ennis' longtime manager, Cameron Duncan, unfortunately he passed away earlier this year. Based on what rumors and rumblings are out there, it looks like he jumped into bed with the PBC.
Perhaps Al Heyman is managing him now. The problem is, the PBC ain't got no fucking money. Haven't you figured that out yet? No shows in January, no shows in February, just one show in March at the end of March, and it's a pay-per-view.
While every other outfit is rolling out their comprehensive schedule of fights, the PBC only has one fight on schedule, one fight, just one, and it's a pay-per-view.
Can't you read the writing on the wall? Rick Glacier can. Boxing insider Rick Glacier, who said, the big-name fighters are starting to jump ship on the financially floundering PBC. First was Deontay Wilder, then Ray Vargas, and now it's IBF World Super Lightweight Champion Subriel Matias. Plus, nothing declaratory from Terence Crawford, but he's now technically a free agent, and Canelo is now questioning who's putting up his guarantees. The smart ones are jumping ship.
These fucking idiots log into their social media accounts harping about how they want a Crawford versus Ennis fight with no regard as to who's supposed to pay for it. Who's gonna put the money up?
Because somebody has to. Somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to bankroll the show, and I'm not convinced the PBC wants to. I'm not convinced the PBC has it in the budget to pay for a show like that. This is why I said that Subriel Matias should get off the island as soon as possible, and this is why I said that Jaron Boots Ennis needs to be careful, that he shouldn't get trapped on the island, that he should see what else is out there. Maybe you go to Top Rank, see what they have to offer, or Matchroom, because the PBC, they ain't got no fucking money, and they barely have any fight dates.
And don't even talk about names. Don't even start up with names, because what names are left at 147 pounds if you had to resort to trying to get a super lightweight to fight him?
There are no names. What was once the PBC's stronghold at 147 is reduced to ruins. Danny Garcia moved up, so has Keith Thurman, Sean Porter retired, and Errol Spence Jr. is finished.
He needs to retire.
Said it then. Jaron Ennis and his team need to think carefully about who they're going to jump into bed with moving forward, because there are no big names at 147. Not anymore. And what he needs more than anything is activity, fight dates, getting out there on a regular basis, because there are no big names to fall back on.
Not really. So in the absence of a high-profile fight
dates, an abundance of fight dates and opportunities to fight would be the next best thing. It would seem that he has so stranded himself on the island. I don't know what he's gonna do now.
who he's gonna fight, when he's gonna fight. The PBC only have one fight on schedule, and that's a pay-per-view. He's not on it.
Everybody that believes in hardcore boxing fans, they know Crawford can beat Canelo, just like they knew Bud was going to beat Spence. This is real simple. It's real simple. You just got to know boxing in order for you to be able to say that. Terry's going to get in there and do what he needs to do, perform.
We talked about Jaron Ennis's scarcity of options at 147, but Terence Crawford is also facing a similar scarcity in the sense that he only wants to be in big money fights, big opportunities, and I don't blame him. At his age, in his mid-30s, having accomplished all that he has accomplished already, it's natural that he only wants to get out of bed for the big opportunities. One opportunity, what I think could be a big opportunity, is a Tim Tszyu fight at 154 for Tim Tszyu's WBO title. That is a fight where you would have domestic revenue, domestic interest, and foreign interest.
It combines both the American and Australian boxing scenes, those still riding high off of Terence Crawford's career best win over Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu, who we all know is a box office draw in his own country. That makes that fight financially viable at 154.
You could do it in Australia. You could do it at Marvel Stadium, where I'm sure the fight would draw a crowd. Or you could do it here in America, in Las Vegas, where I still think it'll draw a crowd, and it might do decent numbers at the box office here in America, domestically, and more numbers abroad in Australia, which would supplement the effort. Thus, the fight itself would generate the money to pay the fighters. It is financially viable. The only other financially viable fight out there for Terence Crawford that is a big money fight is a Canelo Alvarez fight, which is more talked about than a Tim Tszyu fight. And you know, a Canelo fight pays for itself.
But when you tack on Terence Crawford's buzz, that he's buzzing right now, off of that career best performance, that dominant victory over Errol Spence Jr., those fans that are supporting him, in tandem with Canelo's fans that usually support him, this fight could do close to a million, or maybe a little over a million.
I think it would do well commercially, and the commercial viability of a fight is what determines whether or not it's even possible. These two fights are more possible than a Jaron Ennis fight because a Jaron Ennis fight isn't a big fight. It might be significant to the hardcores and the people who follow boxing closely, close enough that they even know Jaron Ennis exists.
But Jaron Ennis is not in America what Tim Tszyu is in Australia. And you can fucking forget about Jaron Ennis being anywhere near as popular as a Canelo Alvarez. See, that's the problem. In order to do a fight, somebody has to bankroll it. Somebody has to be willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the reason somebody might not be willing to pay for Crawford versus Ennis is because of what the fighters are gonna want versus what the fight is worth.
What, if anything, would it generate commercially? Because I don't give a fuck about your annotations or your anecdotes about Jaron Ennis and how good you think he is. To do a fight, somebody has to pay for it on the predication that it will generate more money than they put in, or at minimum break even.
And no evidence suggests that Jaron Ennis is a box office draw of any kind. Thus, why would anybody want to gamble on that pay-per-view?
Why?
They wouldn't, and that's the point.
Wake up and smell the coffee. It would seem that Team Crawford really have their hearts set on a Canelo Alvarez fight. It's a fight some people think he can win. It's a fight some people think he's sure to lose. But one thing's for sure, the fact that people are talking about it, debating it, that lines are being drawn in the sand and people are picking sides.
Spirited arguments. You can feel the passion.
That is an encouraging omen, a good sign that this is, in fact, a super fight, because that's what happens with super fights. People start to argue about it and debate it and discuss it day in, day out. Separate factions of fans. It has all the ingredients of a super fight, irrespective of how it plays out. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that Terence Crawford could pull it off. It's a fight that he might win, but it's also a fight where he might get knocked out. Listen, I ain't got a horse in the race. I'm a fan of both fighters, Canelo and Crawford. I think they're great. I think they're special.
Terence Crawford beating Canelo Alvarez? That wouldn't surprise me. But Canelo knocking him out? That wouldn't surprise me either. I'd just like to see it. I would like to see what happens.
Terence has the right style for the job. He's got the right base style, the versatility, the movement, the outside fighting, the sharpshooting. He's got all those things, but he's not naturally bigger or stronger than Canelo. And I don't think he's as durable. So that's where the contest lies.
Can he avoid Canelo Alvarez's power and still get the job done for 36 minutes? Can he do that?
But does he get knocked out trying?
You've made a lot of headlines about wanting a fight with Terence Crawford. Why do you want to fight with him so bad?
Because out of despair, out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope. And that's what it's all about. Isn't it about the best fighting the best? He's only one class away from me. Canelo is 3 weight classes away from him. So what makes it more of an ideal fight? Come on now. But I think it's the fear of the unknown.
And of course, there is Teofimo Lopez, who's thrown his own name into the hat as a worthy combatant, a worthy adversary for Terence Crawford, saying that the fight between them is a lot more realistic than a fight between Terence and Canelo. There's so much weight between them, whereas between him and Terence, there's really only one weight class. All Teofimo would have to do is move up to 147. Now, I don't know how earnest Teofimo is in this campaign.
I have my doubts.
But just on the predication that he's serious and he means business and he really does want this fight, there's only 2 ways it happens, just 2. It's either Top Rank offers to do the fight after Thursday's fight, they offer to pay for it, or His Excellency, Mr. Turki Al-Sheikh steps in with his checkbook and he offers to pay for it, at which point Top Rank would air it here in America via ESPN as a pay-per-view. That's the only 2 ways it happens, and that's the only 2 ways it goes down, because even if Terence Crawford is a free agent at this time, Teofimo isn't. Teofimo's still under contract. He's still with Top Rank, and there's no way this goes down without their involvement to some degree.
Now, it is commercially viable. I could see this fight doing 400, maybe 500,000 pay-per-view buys.
With the right promotion, some sound bites, some back and forth, perhaps a little more. But I do think it is a commercially viable fight. Now, as far as Teofimo's chances, I will admit that I've underestimated him in the past. But in some ways here today, I still don't know how bankable he is. I still don't know if I can trust him, because a part of being an elite fighter is being consistent. You have to be consistent. You don't beat a Vasyl Lomachenko and then turn around and lose to a George Kambosos.
But he did. And you want to pay attention to why he lost to George Kambosos. Why did he look bad with Sandor Martin versus why he was able to beat Vasyl Lomachenko and Josh Taylor?
Hindsight being 2020. The underlying principle as to why he beat Vasyl Lomachenko and why he beat Josh Taylor is because they're both close quarters fighters, aggressive fighters that regularly open up. With Vasyl Lomachenko, in spite of him being a mid-range volume puncher, he wasn't able to stay in character with Teofimo due to Teofimo's speed and power and his counters. He was wary of the counters at the start of the match, so much so, he basically gave up 5 or 6 of the early rounds. With Josh Taylor...
Never mind that Josh Taylor arguably already lost to Jack Catterall, and never mind that he hadn't fought in a year.
We saw on the night was he was too aggressive with Teofimo Lopez. He was trying too hard to stand in front of him, and he kept getting countered for it. He was trying to overpower Teofimo Lopez mid-range to inside, but he kept getting countered on the way in. Kept getting caught with hard shots.
Now what about the two guys that made Teofimo look bad? What about George Kambosos? What about Sandor Martin? What did they do?
They did the opposite. They weren't trying to close the distance. They were trying to keep distance and work off the counter. They were staying on their toes. They were moving lateral. They were keeping space, keeping distance. They were setting up Teofimo. And neither George Kambosos or Sandor Martin are as tall or as long as Terence Crawford. See, Terence Crawford, he wouldn't make the mistake that Vasyl Lomachenko made or the mistake that Josh Taylor made. He doesn't need the crowd to pocket. He can pot shot him from the outside. He's got the height and length and the snap on his punches to do it from out of either stance, southpaw or orthodox. And if by some chance Teofimo Lopez gets inside, he's not stronger than Terence Crawford in the pocket.
Not stronger than Terence Crawford. Stylistically or physically, this fight is all wrong for Teofimo, but he claims to want it.
Terence would sharpshoot. He'd pick him off easy, on his toes from the outside, walking Teofimo into punches as Teofimo tries to get close to him.
Because he has to. He's the shortest, stumpier guy. He can't fight this fight from the outside because he ain't got the length to do it.
He has to get inside before he can do anything, before he can land anything. And in trying to get inside, he'd come under heavy fire. I don't have a doubt in my mind that Terence would stop him.
He'd bust him up, then knock him out.
But this is the fight Teo says that he wants.
Oh, yeah?
And I say, give him what he wants.